Okay, we're going to come back to Sophocles' Oedipus the King. Excuse me. And with it last time, I concluded by talking about, or I spent most of the class talking about why Aristotle in his Poetics esteemed this work to be the best example of the tragedy, and the tragedy to be the most serious and significant of all of the literary genres known to the ancient world, which I said to you was an extraordinary claim in the light of the fact that in the Greek tradition, that Homer had been considered to be the great poet and the great teacher of all of Greece. So he was called literally the teacher of all of Hellas. And that would be including for Aristotle and for his great teacher Plato, because Aristotle's pupil, Alexander the Great, slept with the Iliad under his pillow. The great epic, the Iliad, was what Alexander had accompanying him on his voyages of conquest throughout the known world all the way to India. So it's clear that the epic continued to play this role of significance in the lives of the Greeks, and yet Aristotle, the great philosopher, said that it was this work that was the greatest. Why did he say such a thing? I suggested last time it was because of the philosophical seriousness of this particular play, and in particular the identity of the figure of Oedipus, because remember, Oedipus is famous for being a prophet, and a prophet at that who defeats the Sphinx. The Sphinx here up on the screen behind me, and Aristotle or Oedipus wearing a sort of a funny hat here. But anyway, this is, as I say, taken off of a cup, the side of it. But what we know about Oedipus is a little bit of a play on words I suggested to you, and it's that his name is this play on what do I know? Oedipus. Oida from the verb to see, to know, and the pu there to say, what do I see? What do I know? He thinks that he is prophetic, and he's proved his prophetic powers by defeating the Sphinx. The problem is that he doesn't even know who he is. And this is what the play establishes for us, although Oedipus is the savior of the city of Thebes and has solved the riddle of the Sphinx. Remember, the riddle of the Sphinx is what walks with 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening, and he solves the riddle by answering, that's a man. So it's a play about solving the riddle of man, and he believes that he solved the riddle of man by answering a man, nonetheless doesn't even know who he is. And we, the audience, however, do know who he is. And not only do we know who he is, we know the story of Oedipus so intimately that we don't need to hear the story of Oedipus. We already know the story. As I say, it's an ancient story known in Homer's time. And the prophet that we have not yet met, last time I didn't get that far, Tiresias, we meet in Homer's Odyssey in the underworld. He's the blind prophet in the underworld that Odysseus is sent to consult in order to find his way back home to Ithaca. So it's an ancient tale. As I say, Homer writes somewhere around the 8th century BC about the Trojan War that was probably 400 years before that. And he's talking about Tiresias and the events that happened in Thebes. And they're so infamous that they've passed into myth and legend, even in Homer's day, but certainly 400 years even after that, in the time of Sophocles, who writes this play. And Aristotle says that this play is about not just the man Oedipus, it's about us. It's about humanity, for whom human nature is a riddle. They don't know who they are. And this is the reason I say that Aristotle thinks this is so important, is Plato thinks it's so important, because the main figure in Plato's philosophical corpus is the figure of Socrates. And Socrates is, by all accounts, the most wise man of the Greek world. And he was so renowned for his wisdom that Plato writes about him, and then subsequent Xenophon writes about him, and everybody writes about Socrates. And what does Socrates think about himself, however? What makes Socrates such a figure of wisdom for the Greeks? And what connects him to the figure of Oedipus? Does anyone know anything about Socrates? You're doing a little bit of Socrates in your intro to philosophy, I assume, or if you haven't, you will. Socrates used to go around asking, who is the wisest person? Who can tell me about wisdom? And he wanted to become wise, and so he went around to the wisest people of his day and asked them questions. And what we discovered in the dialogues, if you read Socrates' dialogues or Plato's dialogues, where Socrates is the main figure, we soon discovered that the wise figures that Socrates meets are not particularly wise. And it's not very long before Socrates makes them all look like fools. For which reason, when he goes to a place called Delphi and consults with the oracle says that Socrates is the wisest man alive. The same oracle that was consulted in this play, Oedipus the King, where Apollo is worshipped. Am I going to find this? And on the entry to the Delphic oracle are these words. This is in Greek here. Gnothis auton, know thyself. This is the prescript written on the top of the entry into the place of the Delphic oracle. Know yourself. Know thyself. And it's a very gnomic statement. What exactly is connected with knowing yourself and entering the temple of the priest of Apollo? Remember, Apollo is the one who's destroying the city of Thebes. And we don't know the answer exactly. Know thyself. Well, what does that mean? Well, the idea of figuring out who you are as a man becomes central to Greek philosophy and is central to this same play, Oedipus the King. What is human nature? What are we really like? Aristotle says that this play explores this topic in a way that only the philosophers do. But the tragedian is equally interested in the topic of what human nature is. But it's not just who Oedipus is, it's who we are. It's a story about man, not just this man, but man in general. And as I say, Socrates is famous because he knows he doesn't know. That's what makes him famous. He doesn't claim to be wise. He tells everyone else, I'm really ignorant. You have to enlighten me, tell me, and school me in the ways of wisdom. And what we find out is that actually he's the wisest man precisely because he says, all that I know is that I know nothing. This is this is the beginning of Greek philosophy in its most mature form, is the awareness of the problem of human nature. And it's a pretty self-evident problem that it can't be solved by human beings because we are both the object of knowledge and the subject of it. We're trying to talk about knowing ourselves, but again, we can't do that in an objective fashion because we're implicated, if you think about it, experimental science, we're implicated in the whole study. We can't be objective about it because it's subjective. It's biased. And at least Socrates knows enough to know that he can't say anything definitive about the topic. And so, but that's a good beginning point. It's a postulate of humility. Oedipus is the opposite of Socrates in this sense because he is as proud as a peacock. He's the one who solves the riddle of the Sphinx. Becomes famous for his prophetic abilities. And yet he's blind to who he is. And the whole audience watching him in the amphitheater where these plays were performed knows not only who Oedipus is, but what he represents, which is he is an abomination. He's the product of incest. Or not the product of incest, he commits incest. He commits patricide, he murders his father. This is a deplorable man. And we all know it, but he doesn't know it. And Aristotle is saying there's something true about Oedipus, which is also true about us. And this is why it's the most philosophically serious play in the most philosophically serious genre. So now you get a sense of why he thinks it is so. Now, I said that, and Sophocles is very sophisticated in the way he portrays this. I've suggested it's connected to his name, but you can also see it in his mirror image in the figure of Tiresias. Remember, Tiresias is physically blind. He can't see. And yet he has such prophetic powers that he's renowned throughout the Greek world for being able to prophetically see the future, which is why, again, Odysseus consults him when he goes down into the underworld. But here we meet him while he's still alive, and he's already blind. By the way, how did he get struck blind? Does anyone know the story of why Tiresias is blind? He was asked by the gods to adjudicate on the question of who enjoys the sexual act more, a man or a woman. That's a dangerous question. It's a sort of a weird question, but it's still that we have a female goddess, a male god. You tell us, Tiresias. Now, how's he going to figure out the answer to that? Well, he gets turned into a woman, and then he gets turned back into a man. So he's an androgynous figure. And because he answers the question, one of the gods is going to be very angry, and he strikes him with blindness for it. But in return, he gets the terrific gift of insight going forward. Now, and he becomes a cultic figure, and I want to say there's something very odd about this. He's a shamanist character then. And pagan androgyny is characteristic of wise figures in multiple religious traditions, pagan religious traditions. Androgyny. It's deeply problematic. In our day, it's taken as the ideal, by the way, in case you weren't aware of that. It's being promoted actively in many ways, but it's very much a part of pagan mysticism and the occult. But that's how he came to lose his sight. And he is a sort of, as I say, a mirror image of Oedipus, because Oedipus is renowned for his wisdom, and yet he can see clearly. Tiresias, also renowned for his wisdom, can't see at all, and yet one of them is blind and the other can see. And it's not as it appears. And this too is characteristic of human nature. People judge by appearances. They judge by what they see. And what they see is not the same as what they know. And so Greek philosophy is an exploration of what lies behind the appearances. And so it will look into the nature of things. And it will do so through the means of what we will eventually call the seven liberal arts, which are comprised of the trivium and the quadrivium. The quadrivium, grammar, dialectic, rhetoric, being the sciences of words. And the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, astronomy, being all the sciences of number. Pythagoras, you learned Pythagorean theorems when you were in school. It's the way to explain the universe in terms of number. Now, you've never seen a number in your life. I can write a number on the board. That's just the number that designates the concept of number, but there is no such thing as a number 1. You can write a 1, you can write a 2. That's the sign of a number, but the actual number, there is no such thing. It's a quantity, it's a necessary aspect of thinking. And there are laws of logic, so 1 is not the same as 2. 1 does not equal 2. Right? There are relations between them. These are necessary logical relations. Number is the way of thinking about reality that we cannot see and yet is necessary to explain what we see. That's the path of thinking. So it's looking below the appearances for what is necessary in order for thinking to be possible. And the laws of logic will then be the rules that govern that. So when I say it's this thing, the laws of identity, the law of non-contradiction, etc., the law of the excluded middle, these are the 3 laws of logic that Aristotle lays out and says if the laws of logic don't hold, then thinking is not possible. We can't actually think about anything, but we can. And not only can we think about these things, it explains the appearances. So if numbers hold true in the equations, then we can start to build vast edifices, ancient structures that are with us to this day, like the Parthenon in Athens and the Roman aqueducts and so forth, and all the architectural marvels of the ancient world. They still stand because numbers do actually add up, and they do make reality function, and they underlie that what we see around us, and so we can build it, and that's thinking that. Okay, but at the center of that, there's still the biggest problem. Even if words are one of the ways we apprehend reality and numbers are, what is the thing that apprehends the world and through numbers and through words, namely man? What is that? That's what this play is about. So if you didn't think the play was important or just thought it was just like this bizarre, and really it is sort of bizarre play connected to fatalism, as I suggested to you last time, and the idea that human life is ruled by forces that we have no power over. For all that we wish to change our destiny, we can't do that because we're fated. There's more to it than that. Are you not interested? Like, it's fascinating. Like when you start pulling it apart, which I've just done. So as I say, this is the prescription above the Delphic temple to Apollo, the Delphic oracle mentioned in Scripture. Prescription to know yourself, which as you can see from, I just took this off the Wikipedia page. Philosophical maxim inscribed upon the temple of Apollo in the ancient Greek precinct of Delphi, most famous oracle in the ancient world, which was struck dumb, by the way, when Christ came. It went silent, never again spoke. The oracles of the pagans went no more. Also very interesting. But we're going to go to the play, and I'm more interested in the play than I'm interested in the various rabbit trails I could go down here. But we left off last time, and I had not yet mentioned Tiresias. We had mentioned Creon, who is Oedipus's, what is he? Brother-in-law, I guess. When I say that, I'm guessing because he's also his uncle. Yeah. Eesh. And he doesn't recognize his uncle, it's his brother-in-law. And because it's his brother-in-law, there's political intrigue. He's a rival for the throne. And so he is going to accuse, when he starts hearing things he doesn't want from Creon about who might be responsible for the crimes committed in the past, he's thinking, you're just saying this because you want me out of this, my throne, and you want to sit here yourself. You're the one who's involved in it. You're benefiting from your brother-in-law's murder. And it's you that's behind this, not me. So that's going to be in the background there as well. But we left off with the chorus coming in, and then Oedipus coming back to them. And I'm going to pick it up in line 216. And as I say, the chorus with the strophe and the antistrophe going back and forth, basically pronouncing that they have total faith that Oedipus will be able to solve the problem that bedevils their city because he's already done it in the past. So they just love him. They worship the ground upon which he walks, and they think he's going to solve the problem. And Oedipus is very full of himself. And of course I'm going to get to the bottom of that, even if the problem comes back upon me. I'm the problem here. Like there's a lot of irony going. The audience goes, yeah, we know you're the problem, and you don't know that you don't know how true your words are when you say these. And so the audience is groaning at a man who, remember, Aristotle says represents them. This is how ignorant we are of ourselves. We think that we're wise enough to see who we are when actually we're plain dead ignorant. Oedipus, for what you ask me, if you will hear my words, and hearing welcome them and fight the plague, you will find strength and lightening of your load. Hark to me. What I say to you, I say as one that is a stranger to the story, as stranger to the deed. For I would not be far upon the track if I alone were tracing it without a clue. But now, since after all was finished, I became a citizen among you, citizens, now I proclaim to all the men of Thebes, whoso among you knows the murderer by whose hand Laius, son of Labdacus, died, I command him to tell everything to me. Yes, though he fears himself to take the blame on his own head. For bitter punishment he shall have none, but leave this land unharmed. Or if he knows the murderer, another, a foreigner, still let him speak the truth, for I will pay him and be grateful too. But if you shall keep silence, if perhaps some one of you, to shield a guilty friend, for his own sake shall reject my words, hear what I shall do then. I forbid that man, whoever he be, my land where I hold sovereignty and throne. And I forbid any to welcome him, or cry him greeting, or make him a sharer in sacrifice or offering to the gods, or give him water for his hands to wash. I command all to drive him from their homes, for he is our pollution. As the oracle of Pytho's god proclaimed him now to me. Pytho, the Apollo's god, the Pythoness, referred to again in the book of Acts. Apollo has revealed to me that man who committed the murder is the pollution which is blighting the land. That man must be driven out. So I stand forth a champion of the God and of the man who died. Upon the murderer I invoke this curse. Whether he is one man and all unknown, or one of many, may he wear out his life in misery to miserable doom. Remember, he's swearing this oath on the murderer, which is him, not knowing. If with my knowledge he lives at my hearth, I pray that I myself may feel my curse. On you I lay my charge to fulfill all this for me, for the God, and for this land of ours, destroyed and blighted by the God forsaken. Okay, so he takes a great oath upon himself and his audience and promises a curse on the man who has done this, which of course is a curse which is actually going to fall upon him. Now all of this is done, and the audience knows right from the outset that he's going to bear the curse that he pronounces on a third party, not knowing that he is that third party. So that's, again, the sophistication of the whole narrative. Again, he can't see. He thinks he can see, but he can't see. He can't see himself. He's blind. So then he comes to the prophet Tiresias. Let me come to that passage here. And the chorus responds to him, and is commended by the chorus to speak to him because he knows, he was around back then and he knows something. Let me pick it up at line 295. The chorus says, it was said that he was killed by certain wayfarers. And then Oedipus said, I heard that too, but no one saw the killer. The chorus said, yet if he has a share of fear at all, his courage will not stand firm, hearing your curse. And then Oedipus, the man who in the doing did not shrink, will fear no word. And then chorus, here comes his prosecutor. Led by your men, the godly prophet comes, in whom alone of mankind truth is native. The truth and Tiresias are hand in glove. They come together. Tiresias doesn't lie. It's a prophetic utterance. He tells the truth. He's not going to conceal it. So he enters. Enter Tiresias, led by a little boy. Why is he led? Because he's blind. He's got the staff. He's like the man at the end of the story, which is, again, we all know that Oedipus is going to become like Tiresias, is blinded and requiring a cane to walk around. So the whole story, even the riddle of the Sphinx, referring to the man, is that man right in front of us, who began the story as a baby and ends as a blind man being led by his cane out of the assembly. Anyway, Oedipus, speaks. Tiresias, line 300, you are versed in everything, things teachable and things not to be spoken, things of the heaven and earth creeping things. You have no eyes, but in your mind you know with what a plague our city is afflicted. My Lord, in you alone we find a champion. In you alone, one that can rescue us. Perhaps you've not heard the messengers, but Phoebus, that is Apollo, sent in answer to our sending an oracle, the Delphic oracle, declaring that our freedom from this disease would only come when we should learn the names of those who killed King Laius and kill them or expel them from our country. Do not begrudge us oracles from the birds or any other way of prophecy within your skill. Save yourself and the city. Save me. Redeem the debt of our pollution that lies on us because of this dead man. We are in your hands. Pains are most nobly taken to help another when you have means and power. Tiresias, first words. Alas, how terrible is wisdom when it brings no profit to the man that's wise. This I knew well, but had forgotten it. Else I would not have come here. So he's asked he's praised to the heavens for his vast wisdom and knowledge of things. And because of his vast wisdom and knowledge of things, he's terrified and doesn't want to speak. Because he knows that the reward for his speech will be that, first of all, he won't be believed. He'll be treated like Socrates. And secondly, he'll be reviled and attacked. And thirdly, they'll want to kill him, just like they did Socrates. So the figure of Tiresias is a sort of a Socrates-type figure, except unlike Socrates, he's not going to want to tell the truth, and Socrates never flinches from it, which is why he's admired. But Tiresias, the prophet, is afraid. He carries the burden, like it says the prophets of the Old Testament do. And Oedipus, in response to this, what is this? How sad you are now you have come. Tiresias, let me go home. It will be easiest for us both to bear out our several destinies to the end if you will follow my advice. Oedipus, you'd rob us of this your gift of prophecy? You talk as one who had no care for law, nor love for Thebes, who reared you. Yes, said Tiresias, but I see that even your own words miss the mark. Remember I said the word hamartia is to miss the mark? Even your own words miss the mark. Therefore I must fear for mine. For God's sake, if you know of anything, do not turn from us. All of us kneel to you. All of us here, your suppliants. All of you here know nothing. I will not bring to the light of day my troubles, mine, rather than call them yours. What do you mean? You know of something, but refuse to speak. Would you betray us and destroy the city? I will not bring this pain upon us both, neither on you nor on myself. Why is it you question me and waste your labor? I will tell you nothing. Now Oedipus is about ready to blow up. You would but provoke a stone. Tell us, you villain. Tell us, and do not stand there quietly unmoved and balking at the issue. You blame my temper, but you do not see your own that lives within you. It is me you chide. Who would not feel his temper rise at words like these when you shame our city? Tiresias, of themselves things will come, although I hide them and breathe no word of them. Oedipus, since they will come, tell them to me. I will say nothing further. Against this answer, let your temper rage as wildly as you will. Indeed, I am so angry, I shall not hold back a jot of what I think. For I would have you know, I think you were complotter of the deed, and doer of the deed, save insofar as for the actual killing. Had you had eyes, I would have said, alone you murdered him. Tiresias, yes? Then I warn you faithfully to keep the letter of your proclamation, and from this day forth to speak no word of greeting to these nor me. You are the land's pollution. So he's starting to provoke him, and he's hinting, you are the land's pollution. How shamelessly you started up this taunt. How do you think you will escape? Remember, he's speaking to the leader of Thebes now. How do you think you'll escape? I have escaped. The truth is what I cherish, and that's my strength. And who has taught you truth? Not your profession, surely. You have taught me, for you have made me speak against my will. Speak what? Tell me again, that I may learn it better. Did you not understand before, or would you provoke me into speaking? I did not grasp it. Not so to call it known. Say it again. I say you are the murderer of the king whose murderer you seek. Now Oedipus is like getting more and more angry. Not twice you shall say calumnies like this and stay unpunished. Shall I say more to tempt your anger more? As much as you desire, it will be said in vain. I say that with those you love best, you live in foulest shame unconsciously and do not see where you are in calamity. Do you imagine you can always talk like this and live to laugh at it hereafter? Yes, if the truth has anything of strength. Note that Tiresias is committed to the truth. And he believes that the truth is going to prevail, for which reason he's wise. But he knows that his audience can't handle the truth. He doesn't want to hear the truth, is willing to do anything to suppress the truth, which is also true of what Plato says about Socrates, who was killed by the city of Athens for proclaiming the truth and willingly drank the hemlock rather than be banished from the city. Read about it if you want to read the Apology of Plato. It talks about the death of Socrates. Very similar sort of figure. So again, this is why Aristotle sees so much philosophical in this particular play. Tiresias, you are a poor wretch to taunt me with the very insults which every one soon will heap upon yourself. And again, the audience knows that everything Tiresias is saying is now the unvarnished truth, and Oedipus has no idea. So he's the one ignorant person on the stage, right in front of us. We all know. And that man is us. That man represents us. That's why he says it's so deeply philosophical. Oedipus, your life is one long night, so that you cannot hurt me or any other who sees the light. Ha! Tiresias, it is not fate that I should be your ruin. Apollo is enough. It is his care to work this out. Was this your own design or Creon's? Creon is no hurt to you, but you are to yourself. Okay, so this exchange between the blind prophet Tiresias and the seeing and allegedly prophetic Oedipus demonstrates the very conflict that we see between Socrates and the sophists in the Platonic debates. You've read some Platonic debates yet? If not, you will if you do Intro to Philosophy. They claim to be wise. They're renowned for wisdom, which is why they're called sophists, because Sophia means wisdom. They call themselves the wise. They claim to be wise. Socrates comes to them and says, "Oh, you're wise. I've been looking for wisdom. Can you teach me? Because I'm an ignoramus. I don't know anything. So teach me." And then he betrays very quickly that the sophists don't know anything, and they want to punch him in the nose and say that he's ugly and all the things that they do. And eventually they want to kill him. But again, this is the figure that the Delphic oracle, that is Socrates, says is the most wise of all men. So note the connection between this play and the life of Socrates, which is the birth of Greek and Western philosophy. Fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to skip over Oedipus's response and the chorus and jump to then Tiresias' response to this, and this is line 4. I'll start at 408. Tiresias says to Oedipus, if you are king, at least I have the right, no less, to speak in my defense against you. Of that much I am master. I am no slave of yours, but Loxias, and so I shall not enroll myself with Creon for my patron. Since you have taunted me with being blind, here is my word for you. You have your eyes, but see not where you are in sin, nor where you live, nor whom you live with. Do you know who your parents are? Unknowing, you are an enemy to kith and kin in death, beneath the earth, and in this life. A deadly-footed, double-striking curse from father and mother both shall drive you forth out of this land with darkness on your eyes, that now have such straight vision. Shall there be a place will not be harbor to your cries? A corner of Kithron will not ring in echo to your cries? Soon, soon. When you shall learn the secret of your marriage, which steered you a haven in this house, haven, no haven, after lucky voyage, and of the multitude of other evils establishing a grim equality between you and your children, you know nothing. So, muddy with contempt my words and Creon's, misery shall grind no man as it will you. Oedipus, is it endurable that I should hear such words from him? Go, and a curse go with you. Quick, home with you, out of my house at once. Tiresias, I would not have come had you not called me. I did not know then that you would talk like a fool, or it would have been long before I called you, etc. So they keep going back. Now note, also I want to note a feature of the text here. Note how the exchanges are very brief between them at this point. There's some long, lengthy speeches, and then when tempers start to flare, the dialogue becomes very short and brief, and the brevity of the dialogue reflects what we notice ourselves when people start getting angry. The exchanges are quick. You don't get long, extended philosophical speeches. You get taunts being thrown back and forth. But note that what they see is filled with sense and connected to the entire plot. So any comments or questions there on this before I move forward with this? Isn't it fascinating? Yes?
Why did Tiresias come if he wasn't going to say?
He was called.
Could you just repeat the question for the microphone?
Sure. Why did Tiresias come if he wasn't going to say anything? Because he was compelled to come. He's the ruler. He had to come and say something. I mean, he's blind. He's led. The command has been given, and he has to at least come. And he says, I don't want to say anything. But he was called by the ruler of the city. He couldn't just say, I'm not coming. They would have dragged him there. Could have run away, I guess, but he's blind. There's nowhere to go. They'd have caught him. Okay. But note also, and this is interesting about Tiresias, his conviction that the truth is his protection. This is also very interesting. It makes him very much like a Socratic figure. Never lie. Socrates says that the person who lies harms his own soul. You might deceive others, but the person most harmed by lying is the person who lies. That's Socrates. What does Tiresias say? I have said, 4:43, what I came here to say, not fearing your countenance, there is no way you can hurt me. I tell you, king, this man, this murderer, whom you have long declared you are in search of, indicting him in threatening proclamation as murderer of Laius, he's here. In name, he's a stranger among citizens, but soon he will be shown to be a citizen, true native Theban. And he'll have no joy of the discovery. Blindness for sight and beggary for riches, his exchange. He shall go journeying to a foreign country, tapping his way before him with a stick. He shall be proved father and brother both to his own children in his house, to her that gave him birth, a son and husband both, a fellow sower in his father's bed, with that same father that he murdered. Go within, reckon that out. And if you find me mistaken, say I have no skill in prophecy. And then they go off. Okay, but now it's like the prophetic revelation keeps growing. By this point, we know how the play is going to end. He's going to be driven out of the city in blindness with a stick, just like the man who gave the riddle to the Sphinx, the old man. He's going to be made old by being deprived of his own sight at his own hand at that. And again, remember I said the audience knows all this because he's wearing a mask with the pain etched on his face and the blood coming down the mask from where he's blinded himself. He represents his blindness. Here's a man who's blind, who everybody's looking to solve the riddle and see things that no one else can see. And again, that represents everyone in the audience, according to Aristotle. That's the poignancy of this. But as I say, this begins the whole voyage of Western philosophy. The riddle of human nature. Yes?
So, we went over, so this would have been performed as the middle of three.
First in a 3-cycle play, and it won first prize, of course.
Okay. Would the mask have changed, or?
Nope.
Is this the first?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're not done. Go ahead.
Like, so Oedipus would have the same mask for all 3 plays, or does it change?
Probably.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. So would the mask have changed over the course of the play and over the course of the 3 plays? I don't know that. But I suspect it would not, because it's his fixed character. You know what the word character means? Like the roots of the word character? It's a stamp. It says in Scripture that that character comes from, the words lead to deeds and deeds lead to character at the end of the chain. Character is a stamped impression on a page. Like it used to be like a typewriter. It would strike it and leave an impression. It's a fixed trait of a person. The mask reflects the fixed identity of this individual. And this individual on whose face is writ pain and suffering in some ways represents human nature, says Aristotle. Yeah. But I don't know. Would he have had the same mask? I don't know. I have no record of reading anything about that, but I would have thought so. It's Oedipus, so that this particular aspect of the story, Oedipus the king, is the most important aspect of his story. Like ones that come after, not nearly so. Yeah. Yes?
So in the book, Antigone is first. Is that because it was written first, or
Yours is Antigone's first in yours?
Mm-hmm.
Not in mine.
Because I know from like different classes, there's something about Antigone being at least written first, if not like first.
I don't know where they would get that idea that Antigone precedes Oedipus the king, because it seems to necessarily follow from it. So I don't know where they would even know that. And it would have been performed at the same time, so I would be surprised that anyone would be able to. And in your edition, Antigone's first? Okay. All right. Well, this is the one I recommended, but I honestly have no idea which of the plays was written first. Or why they would change the order in the different editions. That also is rather mysterious to me. Those are questions I was not expecting to field. Anything else? Like, those are interesting. But no, let me carry on then. So let me say something about a little bit here about tragedy. Tragedy is a form of literature which represents man in a sense historically. I said that Aristotle thinks this is a philosophically serious play, but when philosophy looks at things, it tends to see things in a timeless fashion. It talks about truths that apply outside the considerations of space and time. It's not really interested in history. Whereas the play here presents the state of human nature in the context of the history of a man. Here it's Oedipus. And it even gives us his beginnings as an infant and ends with his conclusion as a blind man, the three-legged man. And for that reason, I think it says something more profound for people who live in space and time and who have a history, and becomes amenable to the Christian story, which also, remember that, although nobody studies history these days, which is part of the folly of our age, I think, but history is the venue of God's providence. The spirit that is given to the apostles in the early primitive church is the same spirit that inhabits the people of this day. And the lives of the people that were lived there, in some sense, are also the work of God's people, and they relate to us. And likewise, the story of Socrates and the story of Oedipus, because these men actually lived and walked the earth and did certain things and said certain things, we can learn from the example of other human beings. We don't live in a mirage. In Eastern philosophy, they call it Maya. Life's an illusion. That's not a Christian point of view at all. Human life we can learn things from a human life. And in particular, we can learn something from this human life, I guess. But he doesn't know what a human being is, and neither does Aristotle, by the way. Exactly. He'll describe it, but he doesn't know exactly what human nature is. He'll say he's a rational animal and so forth, which is a pretty good thing to say. And also is a political animal, lives in a polis, has capacity for reason. We can say more than that, I think. But for now, we'll stick with that. So tragedy has this portrait of man that is historical, and it says something about our own responsibility for our own downfall. And that says something that the philosophers don't say. But tragedy does. It blames us to some degree for the things that we lament about the human condition. We're at fault in some sense. Now, in the play here, Aristotle calls it a hamartia. He misses the mark. He says something that's false. But I think the play suggests a little bit more than he's blind and he misses the target because he doesn't see it. There's a moral guilt that comes with it. There's a dimension to it which in Christian theology we're going to associate with original sin. We're actually morally guilty. It's not just that we got the answer wrong. And that it's not that, life's purpose is to worship God, to walk towards him, to walk as in a garden, to obey his commands and so forth. And we turn our backs on God and give him the finger behind our backs, whatever. That's effectively human life. You don't exist. I don't see you, so you're not there. Right? And I hate you as well. By the way, that's the postulate of human life. The Greeks seem to have a greater sense of human culpability than our contemporaries do, as if we lived in an amoral universe. Not so in the tragedians' minds. So there is this sense of responsibility, but again, Sophocles isn't willing to go as far as Christian theology is going to on this, and he does. And this is part of the poignancy of the tragedy. We feel really sorry for Oedipus because he tries his best to do the right thing. He does his best, and so do his parents, actually. Right? They don't want incest and murder to happen. They hear it's going to happen. They say, we are going to make sure that does not happen. We're going to not let that baby live. And then when he finds out that he is going to murder his father and marry his mother, he's living in Corinth. He thinks those are his parents. So he says, I'm out of here. I'm leaving Corinth and I will never come back so that this never happens. I don't know how it would happen if you were living at home but he is so eager to avoid that atrocity that he leaves Corinth and walks back to the very place where he's going to fulfill the prophecy, not knowing that that's what he's doing. But he doesn't know what he's doing. That's the point. And the reason it's tragic is because it's fated. There's no way of escaping it for him. He walks into the very thing that he most wants to avoid. So we pity him. Aristotle again says this is something characteristic of the epic, the tragedy. We pity and fear fate. And he says that in the process we're purged of it. And so there's he calls it catharsis. You ever heard of catharsis, the word? Aristotle uses it in relation to the tragedy. It's got a cathartic. The audience watching this pities poor Oedipus and at the same time fears the gods. So it has I don't even say therapeutic, it has a religious purpose. Remember, this is at the festival of Dionysus. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Was there any who were Oedipus's parents? Because they also had a role in.
Well, Jocasta is his wife, and that's his mother. And Laius, who he killed, that's his father. Are you talking about the people in Corinth that brought him up as their adopted son and didn't tell him that he was adopted? Or what are you asking?
Just so he ends up marrying his mother.
His birth mother.
The one who put him on the hill.
She gave him to a shepherd boy. His parents, Laius and Jocasta, say, we've heard the oracle say that he's going to do this terrible thing. We can't do it ourselves. You get rid of him. Go.
They get blamed as well.
Of course. What do you mean, do they get blamed? I mean, the father gets murdered for it and the mother gets...
Do they?
Oh, okay. So you haven't read. Yeah, read on. Yes, because first of all, the father gets murdered by his son, his adult son, and the mother ends up conceiving children with her baby, who's now an adult. And the curse is brought upon her, and when she finds out that that's what's happened, she takes her own life. Oh, yeah. And she figures out, the last person to figure it out, by the way, is Oedipus. He is the last person that figures out. Everyone by that point is screaming at him and say, don't do it, don't stop. We don't want you to know. And he's desperate to know. Again, something poignant being said about human nature. We're desperate to know. We don't want it. You don't want to know. His mother says, you need to stop asking right now. I beg you, don't. He won't. Why? Because to the very end, he doesn't think it's him. And to the very end, he's committed to finding out who the killer is because he's a good man. Yet the good man is not a good man at all. He's the worst of men. Says something about sin then as well. It's so deceptive. It might cloak itself in righteousness as he's cloaked in righteousness, but beneath that, I think that's extraordinary. He's a whitewashed sepulcher. The word for actor in Greek is hypocrite. He's a hypocrite. But all the actors on the stage are hypocrites. But he's the most hypocritical of the hypocrites. Like Jesus calls the Pharisees the hypocrites. Those, you in particular, why does he call them hypocrites? Because they claim to be the teachers of righteousness. They claim to be without sin. And yet they're the ones who deny that Christ is God and lead the people of Israel astray with their teaching, for which reason he condemns them in particular and has nothing good to say to them. Calls them a brood of vipers, etc. You can see why this play would be read by Christians, even though it has nothing to do, at least on the surface, with Christ. Nothing. Except the themes are entirely related to knowing and seeing who we are in relation to God. So, but Oedipus knows nothing of this, and he provokes antagonism, and it just grows over the course of time. But he's still on, remember, he's on this sort of he's the investigator, and he's sending out people to find information for him and bring back information to help him solve the riddle, because he's renowned for this. And note that the crimes that he committed are not the result of what we would call culpable negligence. This is not first-degree murder, nor is it first-degree adultery. It's in total ignorance in both cases. Do we hold him any less guilty? Yeah. In our day, if you don't mean to do the bad thing, everyone says, oh, okay, well, you didn't mean it. So that's okay. Or, yeah, that was really, yeah, but you didn't mean to do it, did you? No, I didn't. He really didn't mean to do everything he did. And yet the city of Thebes says this is such an appalling act, and the gods are so outraged by it that they insist that he be purged. Remember, he goes out like a scapegoat. I read those two. I talked about Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and the two animals, one sacrificed, the other has hands laid on and driven out of the city. He's the scapegoat for the whole city, which is also being plagued with for his iniquities. They're implicated in the guilt, and they can't handle that, so they lay it on him, and out he goes, even though he didn't intend any of it. So just think about that. So he does, one thing we could certainly, in terms of, yes, he may be ignorant, but if we were going to find some culpability here, we could at least say he does try to aspire beyond his limits. He provokes Tiresias. There's an antagonism there. He tries to outdo Tiresias. I'm the better prophet. You're ignorant. I'm capable of see. And there is a sort of a dichotomy being struck here between Tiresias, who speaks on behalf of the gods, and Oedipus, who speaks on from the vantage point of knowledge and reason. And even though he says that he wants to do the God's will, is a lot like his parents, and is going to say, well, even though it's fated, it doesn't control me. The fates don't control me. Right? Like, that's how we got here to begin with. His parents said, it might be fated, but we're going to stop that from happening. And then he does the exact same thing. So it's a profound play on words, and it warns Oedipus. And the most interesting thing for me here in that exchange is Tiresias warns Oedipus, if you figure out what's going on here, it will be the worst thing that ever happened to you. You do not want to know. And I'll pick that up next time when we look at Plato's allegory of the cave. He'll talk about this again as being characteristic of human life. We don't want to see the truth. That's human nature. We like our idols. We're happy to be deceived. Even when it's presented to us as plainly as can be, we can't handle the truth. We don't want to see it. We don't want to know it. We will kill anyone who tells us the truth. And proof positive for Plato is Socrates, who gets killed by the city of Athens for doing nothing but go around and claim ignorance and make the wise people very angry for exposing them in their hypocrisy. Okay, so where am I going to go? I'm going to have to skip on here rather quickly. But as I say, the chorus reflects the people of the city. And in general, it starts wholly on Oedipus' side. And then over the course of time, even the chorus knows, and this is the general populace, even the chorus knows the truth before Oedipus does. So the man who's the wisest is actually the most foolish of all men. But he gets into this sort of back and forth with Creon. So first he accuses Tiresias of having plotted to do it. Then he says, Creon, you did it. You set this all up. You want the throne. You probably killed your brother-in-law. I know what you're like. I can see you're plotting. It's all slanderous accusations at this point. But when the news comes, and I'm skipping ahead a fair bit here, but the news comes to Oedipus that the man he supposes to be his father, the king of Corinth, whose name is Polybus, Polybus, that he is dead. Jocasta, his wife, makes an offering to Apollo because both of them believe there's no way that Oedipus can be the killer of Laius, or can be the man responsible for fulfilling all of these terrible things, because your father's dead, so you can't kill him. And if you can't kill him, then the prophecy can't be true. So they blaspheme the gods for this. Mistakenly, of course, but again, blasphemy. What was prophesied, they say, is untrue. And as they digest the news of the death of Polybus, the king of Corinth, and start to consider the implications, he's still worried that he might somehow commit incest with his mother, Polybus's wife. Like, I don't know how that's going to happen either, but he's so serious about wanting to avoid this outcome. He thinks, how am I going to avoid committing incest? I'm not going to be satisfied until that is no longer a possibility. And what we find out, and again, there's irony in this, the messenger says to him, oh, you don't need to be worried about sleeping with her, committing incest with your mother. That's not your mother. He's like, what? So if that's not my mother, then that's not my father. So again, the scales start to slowly fall from his eyes. So at first he's relieved that the king of Corinth, who's died, means that he can't have fulfilled the curse that's been said he will fulfill. Oh, my father died? Then I can't kill him. Great! But I'm still worried about sleeping with my mother. Oh, you don't need to worry about that. That's not your mother. What? Okay, so the irony that is being displayed grows over the course of the play. And the audience's awareness, not only of Oedipus's guilt, which they knew about from the beginning, but how blind his blindness is, it produces a huge tension, and it's sort of delightful in the play at his ignorance. But there's a sort of a catharsis in the play that is provoked by because his mother eventually figures it out. Jocasta does figure it out. When Oedipus recalls to mind that he actually had struck a man on the road, because remember, the messenger was that it was a group of people that killed his birth father, whose name is Laius. It was a group of bandits. Then the messenger says, no, actually, it wasn't a group at all. And the herdsman who they gave the baby to comes back and said, well, actually, I gave that baby to another herdsman. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Nobody can bear to do the terrible thing of killing a baby. And when Jocasta learns that the baby wasn't killed and was given away, and then that baby went to Corinth, she puts it all together. And she takes her own life. And the evidence of Oedipus's guilt grows, and I'll just list them here. First bit of evidence, and we know this from the beginning. Laius and Jocasta are told that their son will kill their father and marry their mother. Second bit, Oedipus is told while he's in Corinth that he will kill his father and marry his mother. Both of them want to avoid this outcome, and so they try and circumvent that outcome. Thirdly, Laius and Jocasta, to avoid this, leave their baby on Mount Kithron. Oedipus discovers that that's where his mother and father in Corinth, that the shepherd found him. They found you on Mount Kithron. And you had this stick, through your ankles. You wonder why you got the limp? That's why. And then finally, both babies had been pierced through the ankles is part of the thing. And when Jocasta hears that, she knows that Oedipus is her baby, and that the very thing that she sought to preemptively prevent from happening has in fact happened. And she can't live with that. And she takes her own life. But Oedipus still doesn't see it. And so he prolongs his agony. And by this point, the chorus is groaning and asking him to stop. Everyone's begging him to stop. And yet he can't prevent himself from finding out. And when he finally does and looks upon, he says, I can't bear to look at anything anymore. If I look at my children, I see my own shame. I don't see children, I see pollution, I see shame. So he goes off stage and digs his eyes out, which Shakespeare picks up in King Lear, Gloucester, when he's blinded. Except he doesn't do it himself, but he's got that from here. And there's a sort of a catastrophe that takes place. So the crisis point is with the death of Jocasta. And so this is the first violent turning point in the play. And it produces a catastrophe, the actual fall of the hero himself. When his mother takes her own life, he starts falling down, and the catastrophe is the downfall of the hero. That's the turning point. So, and worse than the problem is that he, not only is he the cursed one, he has 4 children born of incest who carry on the curse. 4 of them. How does the play conclude? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our essays. Where should I pick it up? 1370. Long speech. Extraordinarily long. I'm going to read it. What I have done here was best done. Don't tell me otherwise. Do not give me further counsel. I do not know with what eyes I could look upon my father when I die and go under the earth, nor yet my wretched mother. Those two to whom I have done things deserving worse punishment than hanging. Would the sight of children, bred as mine are, gladden me? This is after he's plucked out his eyes and he knows everything, right? This is the mind of Oedipus revealing itself to us. No, not these eyes, never. And my city in towers and sacred places of the gods. Of these I robbed my miserable self when I commanded all to drive him out. The criminal, since proved by God impure, and of the race of Laius. To this guilt I bore witness against myself. With what eye shall I look upon my people? No. If there were a means to choke the fountain of hearing, I would not have stayed my hand from locking up my miserable carcass. Seeing and hearing nothing, it is sweet to keep our thoughts out of the range of hurt. Kithaeron. Now he's addressing the mountain where he was exposed and was meant to die. Kithaeron, why did you not receive me? Why, having received me, did you not kill me straight? And so I had not shown to men my birth. O Polybus and Corinth and the house, the old house that I used to call my father's. What fairness you were nursed to, and what foulness festered beneath. Now I am found to be a sinner and a son of sinners. Crossroads and hidden glade, oak and narrow way, at the crossroads that drank my father's blood, offered you by my hands. Do you remember still what I did as you looked on, and what I did when I came here? Oh, marriage! Marriage! You bred me, and again you when you had bred children of your child, and showed to men brides, wives, and mothers, and the foulest deeds that can be in this world of ours. Come, it's unfit to say what is unfit to do. I beg of you, in God's name, hide me somewhere outside your country. Yes, or kill me, or throw me into the sea, to be forever out of your sight. Approach and deign to touch me for all my wretchedness, and do not fear. No man but I can bear my evil doom. Repentance? No. Confession? Yes. Nothing he did. It's a done deed. He indicts himself. He condemns himself. He reflects on his nature now that he knows who he is. And there's nothing in it except for him to walk off the stage with the stick, blindly driven out of the city in accordance with his own rule and command at the outset of the play, and the miasma of his pollution and guilt being driven from the midst of the city. But Thebes becomes renowned for this curse, this deed. And the play reflects something profound about human nature. Now, I want to pull in one other text. I just want to think about if you hadn't thought about this already. Jesus asked his disciple, who do you say I am? Because if you've read the Gospels, you will know for yourselves that the question of human nature is one of the great perennial themes, not only of Western philosophy, but it's also there in Scripture. And in Mark's Gospel and all the other Gospels, Jesus is called the Son of Man. Born of the Virgin Mary. But they only see a man. And they not only see a man, they see a man that they despise. He's a profound teacher. The crowds love his teaching. The authorities hate his teaching, and they hate in particular that he calls them sinners. They hate it. They don't want to hear it. They plot to murder him. But his identity is being revealed in the 3 years that he spends teaching his disciples. This is a confession of one of his disciples. After spending considerable time with him, he says to him, or asks him, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. The identity of Christ, the Son of Man, is the Son of God. He's both God and man. That revelation of his nature also reveals something to us about our human nature. And that's something that you don't get from the Greeks, because the Greeks don't think that we are related to God. The gods fate things. They're, in some sense, we can worship them, we can sacrifice to them, but at the end of the day, the gods really don't care about us. In Scripture, it speaks about God sending his Son to bear the sins not of himself, but of human beings, and he reveals his nature as God in that. And that nature is one which we also bear by virtue of the fact that we have the imago Dei. We're persons. So that notion of human personhood is transformative. I'm not fully getting into that here because it's a little bit too much to pack in at the end of the lecture. But that question about the question with which we began, know yourself, gnothi seauton, who are you? Do you know yourself? Is not a question that can be answered by ourselves. Socrates didn't know the answer. Oedipus certainly didn't know the answer. But human beings can't answer the problem of who they are without it being revealed to them. And they find their identity when they confess who Christ's identity is. So there's something about finding out who you are as a person, your meaning and purpose in life, in conjunction with the story, which is Christ's story, which he pulls us in when we read the gospel accounts. I'm just going to conclude with that because it just seems to me a natural bridge and an appropriate one at that, about this central human problem which is solved when Christ lives and breathes and dies and rises. So I'll leave you with that for now. And I'll see you next class. Next class, I am going to still do Plato's Allegory of the Cave. Okay? Because I realize I'm a little bit behind, but I'm not going to drop it. Okay?